All right, welcome back to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. We've got Jacob Neffendorf on this morning once again for another live stream talking about all things land clearing. Jacob owns and operates Rise Online Ads, aka Land Clearing Growth, and he runs ads for over 100 different land clearing companies throughout the U.S. And Jacob, welcome to the show. What are people going to learn today?
Hey, thank you, Austin. Awesome time as always. Today we're talking about the best land clearing markets and how that affects you and your land clearing company.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive into it. What are the best land clearing markets in the United States?
Wherever you're at. No, I'm kidding. The South is definitely the best overall from what I've seen. Um, it's not very seasonal, not a whole lot of snow, um, lots of sun, lots of warmth, lots of things that support trees and underbrush growing very fast. Um, Florida and Texas are definitely like a couple big steps above. Now, Texas, you may consider cheating just because it's so big. And Texas has like five different types of regions in it. But the search volumes in terms of demand and the amount of companies and the amount of big companies that have big fleets of machines, it's really hard to beat Texas and Florida. That being said, we have plenty of guys doing multiple seven figures that work with us in the north. And then I have heard of many, many companies doing 10, 25, 50 million in any state or multiple states because they're doing international right of way power line type stuff. Point being, there's definitely better markets than others, but that doesn't mean you can't make seven figures where you live.
So let's start with this. What markets do you think you cannot make seven figures in land clearing or forestry mulching?
I mean, forestry mulching may neck it down just a little bit, depending on the type of trees you have and the type of climate you have. So, I mean, places where like Alaska, you're gonna have to really get it in just a couple months unless you're going to do a bunch of snow work, which is a huge point to be made that you can use the machines that you have to do snow work, and then it's like everything kind of goes out the window. But I mean, you definitely got to have trees and they got to grow back. But we know like your area and a lot of the West is a little different in terms of marketing. People don't just like the fact of you coming in clearing a bunch of trees. Like they like forest health, forest service, forestry management, fire mitigation, defensible space type work. And the trees are bigger. They want to stay. Like down in Texas, we have massive invasive species that will just take over a property where you can't even use it, look at it, walk around on it. And I know many other regions are very similar.
Yeah, you made a great point there. It's interesting whenever you look at the search volume, because traditionally, like y'all are going after what land clearing, forestry mulching, brush clearing, brush control, anything else like from a traditional search volume perspective in the South, Southeast, Midwest.
Yeah, brush removal for sure is a kind of a big one. And then like hunting land.
Mm.
So open it up for hunting lanes, trails, ATV trails, food plots, and then of course right of way and pond maintenance. There's 100-acre ponds, stuff like that. So
How much do you get for like trail maintenance and trail building and whatnot?
I'd say, I mean, I'm kind of going off the top of my head here, but maybe 15, 20% of searches on Google for stuff like that. Um, Definitely seasonal, like those few months right before hunting seasons when people, besides the giant commercial ranches, that's when people are looking for it. Now, the giant commercial ranches will usually call like mid-January. They closed their books, hunting season ended, and now they're like, okay, new year, new budget. Let's get in here and fix all the things that we saw during this hunting season.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So you brought up an interesting point because out here in the West, like, yeah, we're using land clearing machines, the same machines that everybody uses in the South or the Southeast, um, with a little bit of a different spin on it. Like, I truly believe the Western land clearing model falls more in line with like a skid steer and a mulcher being a supplemental machine. And people just, they aren't searching for like clear my land. Like, that's just not what people in the mountains want. To kind of recap many of our conversations offline, it's more tree removal. It's a challenging thing to target because that person wants a healthy forest. And yes, we use a land clearing machines, but we as entrepreneurs and as marketers have to figure out how to position our services of what we actually do in front of the people who want those services, which are larger than a tree service company, but smaller than a logging outfit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk. If you had to pick states, top 5 states, how would you rank them 1 to 5?
Oh, well, I'm a little biased, but Texas is pretty darn good. Plus, I live here, so definitely like that. But it's booming right now, and I know there's a couple other states doing this, but Texas has a ton of these AI data centers coming in. So if you're talking short term, I mean, you could make 7 figures on one job if you landed one of these gigs, even like a supplemental gig of that where they're putting in like solar farms or just power. They're running power all over the place. Um, but there's just so many options here, and you can get so far so fast. Like there's there's not the challenges of mountains and water and stuff like there is in some other areas. So that part's pretty nice, and you can even get to the other states pretty quick. I mean, I've heard of barcos or big dedicated mulchers going from here to Arkansas, here to Oklahoma, here to Florida, here to Louisiana, etc. So Texas would be my number one. Um, Florida, I'm tempted to say Florida for number two, but there is the most competition I've ever seen there, and it's in a very dense area. But that being said, the stuff grows back so quick over there. Like we have clients who've cleared a 1,000 acre park over there, and since they've been our clients, have gone back for regrowth. Um, so I mean, it regrows fast over there. It's huge, and you can get around the state pretty quick. Same thing there. So I'm tempted to say that as number two. I mean, it would just be hard to ignore the data um, for that. Now, the other southern states I like because there's less competition, but there's also less search volume, and there's less high income. So like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, there is high income like on the coast, which is where like a lot of the competition is, but like mid-state all the way up, it's pretty low income on average. So, you kind of have to hunt for the bigger jobs or you're traveling, depending on where you live. So I would lump those together. They're kind of all the same from what I see. Like the coastal region's great. And then you kind of have average to mid competition in the middle. Now, Georgia, you do get pretty good up around the outskirts of Atlanta. There's quite a bit going on there. People like moving out of the city. Tennessee's up and coming. So I'm kind of talking in circles here, but if you looked at search volume, Tennessee might give these southern states a run for their money as a whole. Now, if you're comparing like the high market in Tennessee versus the coast of these states, maybe not. But like everybody who works on the coast of those southern states, they cross the state lines. They have to pretty much. So that's why I say it's hard to like kind of split those up. If you were comparing like Tennessee to one of the southern states, it would win. But if you're comparing it to the region, maybe not. So Tennessee would probably fight for 3 or 4 for sure, from what I've seen. Number 5 would be hard because we have 3 really good northern states: Michigan, Wisconsin, and Montana. Which Montana is kind of like more like you versus Wisconsin. Michigan's more like Southern in terms of like the way they clear land. But Michigan is a pretty darn good state. Lots of really good income. Um, and they work all year round up there, even in the winter. Uh, Wisconsin's a little bit lower in terms of the income compared to Michigan, so it'd be hard to compare those exactly. But search volume in Michigan is pretty good. They do lots of hunting up there, which I think makes a big difference. Montana, that valley is like where all the rich people are. But most of the guy that we work with there is like forestry management, like big government. They're diming out, $1 billion a year to government work to manage the forest, and so he's picking up a lot of that. Kind of a long answer there. Sorry.
So Michigan and Wisconsin, similar landscape,
Mhm.
but different demographics of customers. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Why is that? I don't know anything about that part of the US. Do you know?
Michigan's got some high end areas. I don't know what I like the lakes from what I see in videos. It's kind of like living on the ocean. So like people just up in that part of the US that wanted that sort of beach ocean life, they can kind of get it up there, I guess. Uh, but other than that, I don't know besides the fact that people just got up there. I mean, I know it's beautiful, but they have lots of they have a long winter compared to here for sure.
Out of your top 5, just from a revenue producing perspective, clients, are you seeing a focus on B2C, or do you see a transition point to B2B in specific markets?
For our clients, it's mostly B2C.
Really?
Now there are some big ones you could argue are commercial like, big ranch outfits or just just wealthy people with lots of land. But yeah, it's mostly B2C in our world.
And in those top 5 markets, what do you see at the top end of average ticket size?
Oh man. We have a couple guys who are high volume. They're doing multiple machines, multiple jobs a week kind of thing. But average ticket size for these guys like with the dedicated machines, Tiger Cats and Barcodes, I mean you're 25, 30,000 plus easily. With multiple six-figure tickets. I mean every year, every quarter. That's just kind of how you almost kind of have to be there when you're there. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense for the machines.
That's something we should talk about right there. And I think we can talk about it in multiple different models. I'm interested to get your feedback here. But from what you know about the larger dedicated machines, what's the lowest ticket size that it makes sense for that person to mobilize to?
3,000 plus 3,000. Oh, okay. That's not the ticket. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
3,000 a day plus mobilization, which most guys are creeping up to like 3,500 to even 5,000 now. But they're usually looking for 5 acres plus. So, because then that means the machine can at least be there for a week. Because moving these machines is expensive, even if you own the truck or you don't.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, 5 acres, 3,000. So probably about 15,000.
15,000 minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably gonna be it. Unless the only way I see they'll skirt around that is, well, one, if they have a smaller machine in their fleet, but also like neighbors. Like, hey, if I can drive the machine over to your property, it's like a couple miles away versus having to load it back up on the low boy. Uh, they may skirt a $10,000 job or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And look, if there are operators listening to this, which I'm sure the bulk of you are, you understand that mobilization is very expensive to move these pieces of equipment around, and it will get you fast. if you don't keep a close tab on it. And if there are any potential customers of land clearing services listening, that's the absolute truth, right? When a land clearing operator says, "Hey, I can get you," or there's 3 neighbors close to each other, like we can work together here on the mobilization. Like that's the absolute honest truth because of how expensive it is to move this big heavy equipment
Yeah.
around. It's a big reason why we've chosen to stay in the niche that we're in the Western United States, because we have equipment that we can haul around with our 550.
Hmm.
Once we step up into that dedicated track Tiger Cat self-leveling machine like your boy has up there, like I think that's a good move for his stuff. And he and I have had multiple conversations offline. Um, and there are contracts for those machines, right? If you got it, you're going to keep it going.
Yeah.
But to move that down to the residential niche, it doesn't make sense to move that from job A to job B
Mhm.
when they're 10 miles apart or 5 miles apart, right? There's too much coordination that goes on to it. And so, yeah, out here in the West, it's like there's a very clear delineation in my mind. You're either a tree service and you focus on pure play residential, like small removal jobs, or you step into the mitigation work, which is what we do. And you have skid steer, forestry mulcher, track chipper, mini excavator, log grapple, and you are very, very efficient at the 2 to 35 acre plots. But once you get above 35 and you get into these larger timber stands, you're like, man, we really, in order to be efficient at this, and we run into this on our higher end or our larger size properties, it's like we need logging equipment to be
Yeah.
efficient at this. But it doesn't make sense for us to make that step into that equipment because of the niche we've carved out here. And I'm curious from your experience here, more on the pure land clearing model, like where are those clear breaks when it goes from like skid steers and mulchers to I'm stepping up into dedicated machines?
I love this question because I just put out a bunch of videos about guys making this decision too early. And I don't know what it is, but my suspicion is you look at that machine in person and you're like, holy cow, I need this. Like the temptation's just got to be insane. And I mean, I could see myself, if I went to one of these places where they got, and it's not like they're just sitting everywhere. You don't just drive on the highway and see these things sitting out there like skid steers. I mean, they're just not abundant like that all over the place. So if you get where you're in front of one, I could just imagine it's like, yeah, I need this. But then when you see the efficiency of what it can do in a day versus what you can do in 2 or 3 days, if you're, running a skid steer mulcher, it's like it kind of feels like a no-brainer right out the gate. But then once you realize it's kind of like going from a gas truck to a diesel truck. It's like, yeah, you have all these benefits, holds its value better, all this stuff, but it's like it's $1,000 every time something goes wrong. It's literally got more oil, more transmission fluid, more coolant, more filters, more lug nuts. It's heavier. The tools all have to be bigger. I mean, there's just all insurance goes up. That was one thing about you saying mobilizing with your own trucks is like, yeah, it is cheaper than the 18-wheeler, but your insurance is still a lot of money compared to, a plumber in a plumber's truck. Um, so anyways, but for making that jump, you definitely got to have the work to make it make sense. But where I see the temptation, I don't necessarily blame guys, but I just wish they took a little more data behind it sometimes, is they think, well, I can take on and bid better work if I have this machine. And then I'm going to post this machine everywhere and I'm going to get better jobs, which sometimes happens. But to me, that's not a consistent enough reason to just make the purchase decision without having some data and some predictability to put that money up. Um, Now I have seen it where, guys have these big machines and big jobs will call, like the Barcos and the Tiger Cats, they'll call from out of state and bring those in for like giant projects. Like they got 10,000 acres, it's like, okay, very few people have enough machines to efficiently clear 10,000 acres. If they do, they're probably working on some 100-mile right of way, and those machines are busy every day. They're not pulling them off of it. So what I see time and time again is they start calling in their buddies that have, like, everybody got one or two of them, and they're like, "Hey, let's meet down here for a week and clear 10,000 acres in a week," which I've seen happen multiple times. So it does afford you those types of things, but your business model has to be able to support something like that. Getting the machine over there, waiting on whoever subcontracted you to get paid by whatever giant government agency is paying for this, and you fronting the cost for those machines, the fuel, the maintenance, whatever's going to break or catch on fire while you're out there. Um, you have to be able to sustain that, and your business back home still sustain something because you probably have expenses, um, to be able for that decision to make sense. Uh, in terms of, that's where I think people sometimes don't look at the backside of it. It's like, oh, if I have this machine, I'll just be opened up to all these jobs, and people will see the picture of my giant machine on Facebook and think, oh yeah, we're gonna hire that guy because he has that machine. Now, I may sound like I'm contradicting myself a little bit. Like, that's very important for you to put this content out there and explain to people the difference of this machine versus this machine. But that doesn't mean you're just going to get a flood of more work just because you post that cool machine. It's not like just an equal one for one. And I think people do think that sometimes. Um, so for me, when you make that jump, unless you just land some massive job where it's like you can't do this job without getting that machine, that's kind of more of the anomaly. But if you're just looking like, hey, I just want to get that bigger machine because I think it will make me more efficient, you need to look at the numbers and be like, okay, I did 100 jobs in the last year, and I have a predictable way to do 100 jobs or so again next year. Or I did 400 acres this year, and I know I can at least do 4, 5, 600 acres next year. If I look at the numbers and I bought this machine, I would have been more efficient, and I would have either been able to make the same money with less hours, or I could have charged more. Then you look at that compared to what the machine payment, unless you're going to pay for it outright, is going to cost, what the more fuel is going to cost, more maintenance, more uh, more downtime potentially. We just had a client in Mississippi recently had a pin go bad on one of the big heads, and nobody had it. So he was down for like 2 weeks trying to get this pin. And then it was like the next week he had to get the drum balanced. And the closest guy to do it was like Texas or Alabama. And so he was weighing his options between paying this company to come to him or buying the machine that balances the head. It was like the cost was the same. I was like, holy cow. Anyways, those are all things that I feel like guys sometimes don't think about when they're just like, yeah, let me get that dedicated mulcher. And I don't want to discourage it, but like it does pay off in the long run, but it has to make sense numbers wise.
What would be your recommendation to somebody who's came to you and said, "Hey, Jacob, like we're getting these jobs. I really think we could go into this specific niche of the market, step up into these types of machines." What are you going to tell them at that point?
One thing I always caution people on, because I've seen the negative side of this, is if you jump up a little too quick and you're like, I'm a big dog now. I only get big jobs. I got these big machines. You could end up going up market where there's less jobs, bigger payouts, but less payout, less often you get paid out. And you got to front up more money before you get paid. So, cash flow issues can become a problem. But I've seen it where guys get a whole fleet of the bigger machines and then they start turning down, anything under 5 acres. And there's a lot of money there. And that like 1 to 5 acre range, there's a lot of money there. But it doesn't make sense for the big machines to come. Um, So for that, I mean, it's like you have to really be you have to really be careful on what you're doing. You're like cutting off a leg of your business, and a cash flow leg of your business because those 1 to 5 acre jobs, especially if you have 2 machines, you can come in and knock that out in a day or two, get paid, and go on to the next one. And a lot of times those turn into bigger jobs. And that's what I try to tell folks who ignore leads that are under 5 acres. It's like, dude, just like sometimes people fill stuff out and it's like, okay, maybe they weren't really serious or they didn't understand what they were doing. The same thing happens. Sometimes people put in like 1 acre and they really have 100 acres. Like you still need to talk to these leads. But also you could come over and do 1 acre and then you as the authority, the educator in the situation, you can come in and let them know like, hey, you probably need this done. Or if you wanted this done while I have the machine here, it would kind of benefit you. And you can end up turning those smaller jobs into big jobs. So I would say just don't pigeonhole yourself by getting into only big machines too fast. Um, and we haven't really talked about the cons of skid steers and small machines. There's cons there too. There's cons both ways. But I would just say, like, make sure you don't cut yourself short in your market in terms of, what's available. And I know what everyone's going to say is like, well, everyone can go get a skid steer, truck, and trailer. So buying this big machine sets me apart. And it's like, okay, I hear you. But what really sets you apart is by doing a good job, being the authority, educating people, pricing strong, being a legit business, doing the right thing, having a good reputation. Like that's how you win versus the other guy, not just purchasing the CMI.
It's like if we equate this to football terms, it's like where my head is going right now. Just because your team has the biggest and best stadium and the nicest uniforms and the nicest training facility does not mean that you are going to be the best in the game and win the game. What
Right.
matters is if you and your team show up every single day and you put in the reps to block and tackle on the very basic level of operating the business, which is sales, marketing, and optimizing operations.
Yep.
Sales, marketing, and optimizing operations.
Yep.
Sales, marketing, and optimizing operations.
100%.
And then it's like if we're not profitable at this level, how the heck are we going to be profitable whenever we step into a $500,000 machine? Let's fix the problem first.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now that's something to be said. We have a company that's a little more old school, and every Marco they have bought has been cash. And so that's another way to think about things. But uh, it's a longer term growth versus short term growth. And then you can get used. Like we have a guy who got a used type cat recently, but has been riddled with maintenance issues. So
So
there's
here's what
lots.
I'm in. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Let's go down that route. Let's go down that route. New versus used and lightly used and that whole thing. What take your top 5 or let's say top 10 operators who operate their business the best. What is their strategy on equipment? Purchasing specifically. Do they buy new with a warranty? Do they buy used, old crappy and fix them up? Or do they buy very lightly used with no warranty?
I've seen mostly new, mostly new. Um, and where that seems to come from what I see, is the service departments of where they're buying the equipment from are really good. Like really good in the fact that if something goes wrong, they're coming and picking up the machine and they're bringing you another one to replace it. Um, and then also it seems to be a lot of these places offer 0% financing, which seems like a magic thing sometimes, but it makes people jump into it pretty quick for sure. Uh, but yeah, the warranties, yeah, unless you're getting a really old machine with all this emission stuff that's on a lot of them, it sketches me out the idea of getting like kind of old used machine, but not super old because there's just so much issues going on inside of there, uh, and potential issues. And if you're going to have that emission stuff, you might as well have the company warranting it. But I would also say it depends on you as the operator or the owner, or if you're both, because you're going to get destroyed if you can't fix stuff yourself. If you're paying guys like mobile mechanics that are not your friend to come out and do stuff at a job, which is the most efficient way, um, you're going to spend a lot more money than the next guy. Even like maintenance. There's this dude I follow on TikTok who is amazing. I really like to watch his stuff, but he's RPM Landworks in Florida. To me, from what I can see on the outside looking in, he's one of the biggest public like guys that puts content out companies in Florida. Uh, but he has like 3 maintenance service trucks, and that's it almost seems like from his TikTok that he, as the owner, is kinda like the full-time maintenance guy, but he sorta nerds out on it, and he's got these Femco quick connects on everything oil, so he can drain the oil out of everything with no unscrewing drain plugs and no drips anywhere. Like, he sucks the oil out and then puts new oil in. But he's like the full-time maintenance guy, but he's built these service trucks with, you know, welders, air compressors, pressure washers, toolboxes, every part that any of his machines need that can fit in a truck. Uh, and I feel like, on the outside, people might think, oh, he spent a lot of money on those trucks. But if you look at some guys' maintenance bills of them having welders and mechanics and maintenance people come out and fix their machines where they sit, I guarantee you they're spending more. They have to be.
Well, and then I mean, there's an excavation guy here, not far from where we operate, and he's an incredibly dialed operator, very big in the Western United States. And he does the same thing with all his service trucks. And his mindset is, I pick one brand of equipment, I go all in on that, and I build brand equity. And what he means by that is all of my guys are around this type of equipment. They understand this equipment. And what it gives you the ability to do is go recruit other people who have been part of the service departments at these equipment companies. And if you pick one style of equipment and become really great at operating that, then that's where the long term or the long tail effects come in, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the early days, though, it's I have a very strong opinion on fixing versus buying new. And I just truly believe that if you're an operator starting out and if you're wrenching on equipment, that's not the best use of your time as an owner and as an operator. I truly believe that in the early days, like, you got to fight tooth and nail and scrap hard and focus on sales and marketing. And that's the best use of your time. That's a personal, very strongly held opinion. But I just knew, like, I'm not going to go learn, like, how to fix equipment when I can just pay somebody an hourly rate, even though it is a steep hourly rate early on, because I believe that my skill set is more on the sales and marketing, and that's where my edge is, right? So like I said, it's a personal, strongly held opinion. And somebody else like that may have his own competitive edge doing that. I still think that company has to focus on sales and marketing to win.
Oh,
And at some point he obviously has, whether that's just straight B2B cold outreach sales, or whether he went and did campaigns like you run for people. But at some point he made that his focus to get there.
right. No, and I definitely appreciate your opinion, and I don't think you're wrong. Uh, and your numbers, which is helpful. It's like you see the cost reward, the benefit of where your time is spent. The only like middle ground I'd give you there is the time in general, like talked about operations efficiency, is I'm not talking about like, taking the head off a motor, but small maintenance or small repairs that can get the machine going in, under an hour and keep the job rolling versus you're like a dead stop. You have to stop the job and wait for someone to come out. That side of thing can really help you, if you have that level of ability to fix in the field, I think is super helpful. But
Absolutely.
overall, yeah, what you're saying, if if you're if you can go out and sell more work versus, spending 2 days in the shop tearing an engine apart, 100% I would go the other way. Uh,
Absolutely.
but this guy, from what I can tell, they're on multi-month jobs. And so for him, keeping the equipment going, like that's where you also got to know your numbers on the other side is, you're doing these big jobs, you see this big ticket, you think you're making a bunch of money. But then if you have tons of downtime versus what you bid and expected, you could end up not making any money in the long term. And it's hard to see it if you're not paying attention close to the numbers.
Definitely. And I truly believe that it would be great to have him on the show at some point. We should talk to him. Um, but if I had to place a bet, those service trucks came at a growth phase that it made sense for him to focus on the optimization of the operations after
100.
those contracts were in place. So I believe we're going down the same route here, because I agree with you 100%. Like the less than 1 hour fixes in the field, like absolutely, you got to have the mechanically inclined people on your team. My point early on for the guys who are starting out is, rather than taking your skid steer home and tearing down the engine, like Jacob mentioned, and blowing a whole day, it's like, man, if I just buy that piece of equipment new, make one call to the service department, say, hey, when can your field team get here? It's under warranty. Bring me a piece of equipment. If you got 1 day of downtime, I go use that 1 day of downtime to cold call and go hand out more flyers and call my leads back and do all that stuff to keep things rolling on my end. Because I like to think about the different growth phases as what can I own and handle as an owner that nobody else is better suited to do than me at the current phase of growth, right? Where it's like, it's going to be very hard for me to go recruit somebody in the early days in kind of the 0 to 1 million phase if you don't have like a tried and true, tested, trained salesperson.
Yeah.
It's going to take you way longer to go recruit that person to have him replace you as the sales and marketer, as opposed to just making 2 or 3 quick calls and having
Yeah.
that equipment rep bring the service truck out, exchange it, bring it back. And then to your point, I believe that once you get the baseline built up, once you land some of those big contracts, once you get your business model built, then the focus sort of transitions to optimizing the operations.
Yeah. Yeah. And that going back to the market thing, that's something to consider if you're trying to pick like there are dudes we've worked with that have just moved. They just literally moved. Um, but your your service department or your dealer should definitely be a part of your market choice if you're making a choice. Um, and then I always say this, like in terms of choosing the machines, from what everybody has told me, like the service department definitely makes a huge difference. Now that doesn't mean like if you have a great service department of the worst machine that there is, that you just go ahead and do that. Like I'm not saying it's black and white, but in terms of choosing a good between two of the better machines, definitely look at the service department.
What are some other things to consider whenever you're choosing a market?
I think support is something that may be overlooked sometimes. Like I see a lot of guys who have a ton of support, their machine gets stuck and their buddy loads up the machine and comes over and pulls them out versus somebody who has to call in a heavy wrecker and pay them $1,000, $2,000 to pull something out. Um, so having support there, whether that's someone you actually know or you calling ahead to the competition or the people in the area and being like, hey, if I were to start something like this, like how do you do business? Like, are we mortal enemies, or are we here to help each other out to a degree? Um, that would be, one of those kind of funny things to watch for. But definitely like the demand to competition ratio if you're making the choice on your market, because there's some places that have way lower demand, but also have a low enough competition level that that's okay. And then there's places with crazy high demand, but then also crazy high competition. But if the ratio is good enough, you can still be successful. But I kind of like the middle ground of, like, if a tri-county area has got 2,500 searches, and there's and when I say presence, I'm talking about online. We know every community has somebody with a skid steer that will come over and do some work. But I'm saying like a legit company with insurance, website, Google business profile, getting their name out there, their reputation's available. If you have 2,500 searches in like your tri-county area, and you have 10 other legit companies there, if you do the math on that, usually spending a decent amount, you can get about 10% of that to you. So to me, 10 legit people in an area with 2,500 searches, everybody's going to get 25%, or I'm sorry, 10%, which would be about 250. And so 250 people getting to your website, your listing, your whatever in a month, if you think this is how I like to do it, worst case scenario, and it's very reasonable, another 10% of that 10%. So you get 1% of the demand in your area, and there's 10 other guys. That's 25 people. If you go do 25 estimates and you're good, like you're nice, you shake hands, you educate, you give decent pricing, you fair market value, whatever, 20% is going to be a decent close rate. We know, like, y'all are closing way better than that. If you're good at sales, you're going to close more than that. If your marketing, your reputation's good, you're going to close more. So if you can close 20% of 1% of those 2,500 searches in your market, and there's still 10 other guys that are legit out there, then what are we looking at? 5 jobs. 5 jobs. So you're doing 1 job a week. If you're an owner operator, or even have a helper, an employee, a hand crew, whatever, and those are decent jobs, like you got a decent start there. If you can only get 20% of 1% of the demand in a tri-county area. So that's kind of the math I look at, and especially when people start worrying about, oh, I saw this guy start a Facebook ad up. Now everybody's doing it in my area. It's like, bro. So I like that middle ground. Now there's places with 1,000 searches a month, but maybe 3 to 5 legit companies. So the ratio kind of follows. And then there's places with 10,000 searches, but there's 50 legit companies. So that in between, I really like 2,500 searches, 10 companies. And the way my brain really goes is you do better than those 10 companies. And so instead of getting 10%, you get 20%, which is 500. And then instead of 10% of that, you get 20% of that. So now you get 100 leads, and then you close 20% of 100 leads. There's 20 jobs. You're doing 5 jobs a week, or you're cherry picking the better jobs and you're doing 2 to 3 bigger jobs a week. That's where most of our high value clients are at. They do better than the competition, so they get a higher than fair market share of the market. And then they do a better job at marketing to those people. They do a better job at sales to those people. And they do a better job at doing the work to those people. And then they get referrals, and it compounds.
It's the flywheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's recap some math here, because that was incredible right there. So let's start, though, by defining across the U.S., what would you say for owners and operators of land clearing, forestry, mulching, somebody operating a skid steer with a mulching head on it? As an owner operator or a small crew, what is the average ticket size across the board?
Every time I ask everyone this question, and we end up getting to about 5,000. Um, there are some people who will tell me somewhere between 2 and 3. And these are usually guys getting their foundation doing what I would consider backyard jobs. Somebody's got an acre plot and they want the quarter or half acre behind them cleared up, or they got in with a contractor who's doing a subdivision in a country area, and so they're coming in and just opening up lot after lot after lot each day. Those are the guys that will dip below 5,000.
So $5,000 average ticket size, 2,500 searches. You've got 9 other competitors and you're one of 10 total. So out of those 2,500 searches, you're going to get, on average, 250 searches to your website, Google Business, wherever people are filling out a form. Do we have that correct?
Yep.
And then from there, on the 250 searches, as a conservative number, you should be able to get 10% of those as, are you saying site visits, or you should be able as?
So your conversion rate of site visits should be at least 10%. So 10% of people either call or fill out the form.
And so that total number would be what? So are you saying 225? So 25 total people fill out your form, correct?
Yeah.
And then out of those 25 people, you're saying that how many people convert to a booked job?
20% is what I want to shoot for. And plenty of people do way better than that. And the reason I say that, I'm not saying you're closing 20% of people you go look at in person, I'm saying 20% of your leads.
Okay, I see.
A realistic expectation. And so if you get just 1% of the searches in your area to actually talk to you, and you can close 20% of those people, so you're closing 0.02% of the demand in your area. 5 jobs, $5,000, 25 grand. I mean, you could run a business on that for sure.
As a solo owner operator, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's dive into how many places throughout the US, and you don't have to have an exact number. How many places does that Tri-County 2,500 search volume demand exist?
I would say, if I'm really going off the head, rough numbers, and I'll tell you, if somebody doesn't have at least 1,000, I don't talk to them. I say, hey, dude, I don't. If you're not willing to cover more area than this, like, it may not make sense yet. So 1,000's a minimum for us. I like to see 1,500. If I see 2,500, I'm going to be pushing them hard to explain to them the demand because of the formula I just told. But I would say it's about half will have it right away. But the caveat here is a lot of guys will go 100 miles, depending on the type of area they live in. And so if you can go 100 miles, I mean, everybody's got it. Now that doesn't make sense everywhere. Like North Carolina, Tennessee, mountains, over by you, mountains. Like, you can't just say, yeah, I'll go 100 miles. But in some places you can. And then boom, you'll have 3,000-4,000 searches easy.
Okay.
But in terms of the Tri-County area, it's probably about half the people I've talked to will have that volume. Now, keep in mind, the majority of the people I talk to are in the South and East.
And let's just explain the reason why that is.
Climate, trees, regrowth, flat, culture. You know, people are moving out of lots of cities, especially since COVID. and especially wealthier people, they're moving to these more relaxed, more financially stable areas, and their money goes further in these country, flat, lots of forest areas.
Let's recap again what you stated from an operator's perspective, why those markets make sense.
Say that one more time. Sorry.
So I'll recap it here. What Jacob said is, like, if you're an operator listening to this, if you're a solo guy, or if you're considering starting out, the reason that this is in demand in the south and southeast and the east is because of the terrain and geographic conditions that you're dealt. Basically, you're dealt this hand of cards over there. And we can talk about here in the West why our hand is different and how that affects operations and ultimately search volume. But you mentioned a couple things: year-round climate, no snow or very, very, very little snow, flat, the terrain is accessible, the vegetation in those areas grows consistently. And that would be different than some places in the Midwest, right? Because we're dealing with just like big, open, flat fields in some areas like Nebraska and Kansas, right?
Yeah, yeah. Those are more like farmer type work up there.
Yeah. And then the last thing here that you mentioned was that people are moving out of the big cities and into these rural areas. And they ultimately have the goal that they want to have usable property, correct?
Yep.
Is there any other main pain point or driver as to why that demographic of customer would purchase or buy?
Oh, they're not the person who grew up on this land and they have an old tractor and chainsaws where they're just gonna go cut a trail themselves. Like, they buy this property before they ever see it. They come out there and they're like, "Holy cow, I have money, I have no time, and I want to be able to drive through this and look through it and see it. And I don't want to drive to the beach, so I want a pond here." It's like, and they don't have the know-how. They're not going to buy a machine, even if they could afford a machine. They're not going to know how to operate it or want to learn. It's like, and this is way more common than I would have thought 4 years ago. Like, tech guys buying 100,000 acres and driving you around on their Polaris Ranger 1500 expedition with AC to show you the property so that you can clear it. It's, I don't know. They're everywhere though. Like, well, I shouldn't say everywhere. They're coming into the rural areas by storm right now, especially Texas. I've heard of this also in Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, not as much Alabama and Mississippi, but they're coming within like an hour or two of big airports, basically, and buying up these massive properties and getting six figures worth of work done on them every year. And it's a tax write off for them.
What markets? Okay, if you sold your agency, let's say you're out of it, and you decide that you're going to go start a land clearing business, which I know you're not. But if you had to pick a market to start in, what are the top three you're going into that are overlooked right now?
It's hard for me to not be a little biased on Texas just because I get to see it all the time.
Okay, you
Um,
can't do Texas.
okay,
That's the other
okay.
constraint.
There's a good one. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Um, if any of my clients hear this, they're gonna be mad. So just know I'm not doing this. But there's a ton of demand along the coastal region between here and Florida, the Gulf Coast region. There's tons of people moving there. There's tons of regrowth, and a lot of our clients get more leads than they can handle. Uh, so that would definitely be tempting just because of the ease of access, like Interstate 10 along south makes it so easy to get from here to Florida. A lot of these guys go do jobs in Florida, even though they live in Louisiana and Mississippi, and vice versa. Florida guys will shoot over back and forth. So that would be definitely tempting. Um, Down into Florida, a lot of people don't. A lot of people like Central Florida. It's pretty dense. Lots of stuff going on there. There's a little gap like down in the south, but there's challenges down there just because of the water line and stuff. Um, but there's lots of work to be done down there. Not as many people want to do it. So that and Florida's just kind of neat. So that would be a little tempting. It is pretty humid over there though. Uh, Besides that, like Tennessee, North Carolina, like right outside the Smoky Mountains, in the mountains would be difficult, but right outside the mountains on either side, uh, pretty wealthy areas, like high income areas that have trees, lots of trees, and lots of people moving out there. So yeah, I would say basically Gulf Coast region, South Florida, and then either side of the Smokies would be pretty tempting. If I just wanted, didn't care about where I lived in terms of families.
Where is the one market where you're like, I can't believe I don't have a client here yet? Like this market would absolutely crush. Where would you drop one Google business profile pin if you only could operate one location operationally?
Let me cheat real quick. 'Cause I did think about this the other day.
I did the research from my end too, so I have a couple answers.
All right.
And I'm interested to see where yours goes.
I have talked to a couple New York guys, which you would think who's doing it, but the big bulk of New York, like besides the city,
Mm.
there's a lot going on up there. And yeah, and it's very more conservative than I would have imagined, which I'm not trying to talk politics, it's just conservative people generally are more inclined to do this type of work on their property.
As in they're cool with you bringing big diesel powered machines that just mulch crap up and throw it everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why we can't target land clearing in the West right there.
Yes. That's a big one.
And there's a hint for you Western guys there. Don't be running land clearing ads because nobody buys it. Except for the construction guys, but on new construction site prep, it's forest management.
Yeah, I think that's what I would have to say. And the little bit of the cheat there is we have worked with one company in New York, and he immediately got more work than he could handle and was trying to figure out how to pause. So that kind of confirmed my suspicion of like, there's a lot more work to be done up here than people realize. The only other people I've talked to in New York, they owned huge fleets of machinery because they spent the last 2 decades cleaning up New York City from tragic issues and demolition. And now they have all this machinery. They're done working in the city and they want to move these insane machines out and just develop huge properties. But they didn't really have the same mindset as, an owner operator trying to get some more leads.
Yeah.
But I think there's a huge market up there for sure. But you'd have to bootstrap it a little bit, like, because it's not like down here where they see the machines everywhere and they realize they can just hire a guy to come open up this property. it would be like trying to start forestry mulching in the South 20 years ago. You would really have to like educate people on what it is and why they need it.
Let's save that topic for a next conversation here. We're at the top of the hour, but we will talk about riding the wave versus pioneering markets and the difference between that in a future episode. Jacob and I are going to be doing weekly Friday live streams, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Central. We're going to be talking all land clearing. Jacob's got a really cool topic list for us in the next, what do we say, 8 or 12 weeks upcoming? We said 8, right?
8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the next 8 weeks, jump on Friday mornings. We'll be live on YouTube. Jacob's live on TikTok right now. I believe I'm streaming over to X. So anybody in there, tune in Friday mornings. Bring your questions. We're a couple minutes over the top of the hour. Jacob and I are going to just riff on land clearing topics. I'll riff from the operation side. Jacob will riff from the growth side. And anybody who has questions, we will make time to answer here at the end. As a new guy, new business, is posting regularly to Facebook and Instagram the best way to generate leads, or should I pay for ads right out of the gate before I'm even turning revenue? I have thoughts on this, but Jacob, go ahead and go first.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to know. It's a good question. I would definitely want to know if you had capital to spare to answer this question fully, but also I would split that and say posting to Facebook and Instagram and anywhere else is not an if, it's a must. You must do that. Content is becoming a business's reputation. You need to be posting every day, you talking, machines working, education, talking about trees, talking about properties, talking about you, talking about your family, everything. People need to be able to learn about who you are and trust you on the call or on your social media. So just go ahead and do that. If you don't have like before and afters and stuff, my recommendation is always to do free work for friends and family. Get review. Even if you could get one good case study and review, that will be way better than anything else. So yeah, post as much as you can. I think I would need a little more information before I say like, yeah, go ahead and pay for ads. Because you need to have the right content, you need to have the right know-how, you need to have, because you could waste a lot of money really quick is the problem. But your area, how big of an area should I aim right in the beginning? I'm right below Atlanta. I know exactly that area. It's an amazing area. Like you'll do fine. The last we have one client there. The client I had previously to that was with us for years and has since paused with us because he just has more work than he could ever do, and he's just was ignoring the leads. And now he just calls every couple months for us to run a hiring ad because that's his constraint now. Here in a great area. But yeah, you could waste a lot of money on ads really quick. So it's hard for me to just say yes. But the kind of quick hack is if you post a lot, your posts that do the best related to your services, those are the ones you would push to ads eventually.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I like to think about this when you're starting out. What can you do for free that doesn't cost you any money? And do those things regardless, because even if you go run ads or even if you go hire an agency at some point, you still have to have those assets ready to roll. And so I always like to think of in sequential order from an operator's perspective. What can I do right now that's going to go to work for me in the background while I go to work? And so that those things specifically are, first and foremost, I need a Google business profile. And if you don't have a Google business profile, you should absolutely go get one and get one verified at a location listing. There are plenty of free resources out there for how to get one verified. It's way harder to do it from a location perspective than it is from a service area perspective. But those who pick the harder path usually get the better results. And so
10x.
Yeah. Yeah, please verify this from your end. But everything I've seen, everybody I've talked to says location listing will outrank a service area business profile 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, number one is address. You need to have the address on there. It 10x. You need to have the address on there. Number two is activity, and then number three is reviews. Now that doesn't mean number three is not important. Like, if you have 10 reviews, you will be in the top 1% of land clearing companies in the US. So just, you probably have 10 family members, have them give you a review. Like, I know some people don't like that, but go do something for them if you feel morally bound to that, and then have them give you a review. Get 10 reviews, have your address on there and verified, and post to it like social media. So if you're putting a Facebook post, post to the Google Business profile. They like activity.
Reviews are so important, and I said this yesterday in our school group, that if I'm starting a new business, I'm going to get the first 10 reviews, and I'm prioritizing the reviews over profit on those first 10. I'm literally going to go do the first 10, even if I have to do the first 10 jobs for free. That's how important reviews are to me. Now, there will be plenty of people here who blast me on that. Like, oh, these guys are telling you not, work for free. Like, that's where the hustle comes in. Like, you're either willing to go sacrifice your time early on, or you're not. Some guys are, some guys aren't. I am. And I just know that it moves the needle faster. But
Yes.
I don't think you have to work for free. I didn't work for free in the beginning. I'm just telling the audience here how important reviews are to me, and I know how important they are to Jacob as well, to stress the importance of reviews early on, because once you get the reviews working for you, then your Google Business profile goes to work for you in the background. But if you don't have any reviews, and if you don't have a location listing, you are kicking that can down the curb. And I guarantee if you go hire Jacob right now and you don't have a Google Business profile, one of the first things they're going to do is be like, dude, you got to get a Google Business profile, and you got to do the work to get it verified at a location listing. Maybe I'm speaking for you, but
Yeah. No, it is. It's 100%. And we've had guys go from no rankings to ranked with that one change of verifying the address.
so at that point, after we get verified here, what Jacob said is like, you can set up your social media profiles for free right now. What you can also do is optimize your description and focus on naming your business very well so that it shows up earlier in search than if you just pick something like Tom's Construction LLC, right? Like, the number one learning lesson I have learned in business is pick your specialty and optimize for the specialty right out the gate. And I would go back and tell myself to do it a little more specialized early on if I go back 3 years. Has this killed us? No, it hasn't. We've still done a decent job here.
Mhm.
But my recommendation is get really clear on the one service that you want to market on the front end, and just market that one service until you start getting the thing off the ground and you're able to build an upsell process in your strategy. So those two things, Google Business profile, social media, set those up, start developing the presence. Jacob, how important is it right now to have a presence on everything online to optimize for your service area and your service search terms?
It's everything, especially for a new business. I mean, you could come in as a new business and just destroy a 10-year business because they're resistant to doing this, or they're lazy because they already have some jobs and some revenue. And you will come in and be a local celebrity, and everybody will know who you are. And when it's time to get hired, they're going to call you because they see you every time they're on their feed. They see you working, they see your work, they see how you work, they see your reviews, they see your testimonials. It's just going to be a no-brainer versus Joe's land clearing company that has one review from 8 years ago, and he posted a happy 4th of July on his Facebook, and people don't even know if he's in business anymore. It's just a huge opportunity.
Or even Joe's
uh
excavation.
yep, exactly. One massive hack, if y'all want it, this is like a this is a literal hack. So, it feels like I shouldn't be throwing this out, but nobody will probably do it anyway, so it's fine. Google
Oh, wait,
Business. What's that?
did we leave the cliff right here? You have to join next week live to get the one hack.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, then we'd have time to actually go into it.
What should we do?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down. Yeah, we can save it.
I'm just kidding, guys. Let's talk about the hack and we'll go deeper into it on the next one. Give us the what, and we'll talk about the how next.
There you go. I'm usually leery of loopholes for Google because they usually figure them out, and then you kind of get canned. This loophole is kind of uncannable. But basically, we realized that Google Business Profiles, they put a lot of weight on people selecting directions to your location and then driving there. So
Stop it there.
it
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. All right. So if you want to tune in and learn this one right here, this is a good one. This is a really, really good one. It's really good.
Yeah, big hack. Yeah, we can go into it.
You're going to have to tune in live. You're going to have to tune in live next week.
All right. I like it.
Okay. But you gave them the what?
Yes.
The entrepreneurs will figure it out.
Take action.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast here. Friday mornings, we do episodes dedicated to talking about land clearing. And we got one more question. So I'll answer the address, even if it's just a home address or PO box. Ooh, this is a really, really good question. I'm glad we're in it with this one.
So yes, you're gonna have a real hard time getting a PO box verified these days. But I will tell you that I accidentally did this years ago for a business that I owned, and my address was my home. And I am kind of weird where like I know the roads really well, I know how to get home. I would never need the directions to get home, but I always do it just for like time tracking. So I'll be like, okay, I'm here. It's 9:13. I'm gonna put this up. Okay, it says 26 minutes, so I know I'll be home right before 10. And then it kind of helps if you want to see traffic or whatever. And then I always like to try to beat the timer. Just a bad habit. But for years, I have mapped from wherever I was back to home. And so I not knowingly did this hack and got my Google Business Profile ranked because I was just always setting the directions to home and driving home. And that's where my listing was. And so when I opened maps, it would be like my business would come up and I knew that was my home address. So I just click it and directions to there. And yeah, now I'm starting to learn that that is way more of a thing across the board. And it's actually a very good strategy to get you ranked.
So I believe he was asking my address. Should I get a home address or a PO box?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jacob just gave you the sauce.
Sorry, we can go more. There's more to it. There's more to that strategy. But yeah, you're gonna have a hard time getting a PO box. Honestly, I would shoot to try to get a physical location in town, but worst case, you need an address. So if it has to be your home, I would still do it. I know lots of people have issues with that. I feel safe and secure with the way I do things in life. I would use my home address if I didn't have another option.
Did they verify though at home?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think they would.
Yeah, you just have to be able to prove, like you got to show some documentation of business tied to that address, and then trucks that are ordinary to your business type, and like labels on the trucks that show, magnets, truck wrap, whatever. And then you just have to be able to show that you are where you say you are. So like video street sign or something like that.
Another way, if you guys need one, go find an office right now. Office real estate is not the hottest thing on the market after COVID. Office landlords, they like making money. If you offer them US dollars in the US, they are open to an offer. So I just went to a local landlord when I got my last one verified for another business that I haven't shared about here. And I just went and rented a $300 office per month. And I just went to the landlord and I called him, and just go find the unsexy office space in your town. If you find the unsexy office space, I guarantee you they got open cubicles or open office right now.
Yep.
And that's where you can verify your business.
We recently got one verified with like a mailer. We put I taped the mailer to the front door and got it verified that way.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you can definitely do what you just said and get verified and beat 99% of people that will never do the verification.
Yeah, because most people take the easy route, which is the service area. It's like you can get verified right now as a service area. But if you go get an office and if you verify your address at that office and set up your LLC documentation at that address and operate an office, offer somebody $100, $100 a month. It's $1,200 a year. Even if you have to do, for me, I see the value, right? So it's like $300 a month. It's no brainer. $3,600 a year to get that Google Business Profile.
Big time.
Because you're going to get high ticket jobs off of that thing if you go that route. I specialize my company name based off your suggestion. Nice. Yeah, that is the one. It's just like specialize, and dominate the local market. No need to go super wide in the beginning. All right, we're going to wrap this one up. Anybody else have any other questions while I'm doing the wrap up part here? If you do, post those in the chat. And if we miss it, join us next week, Friday morning, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, 8 a.m. Central. Jacob and I will be talking all things land clearing. Do you remember what the topic is for next week? Off the top of your head?
I can look in just a few seconds. Topic for next week is going to be.
I can just picture like CapCut right now, like dum, dum, dum.
Week 1, as we wrote it in this document, was from one machine to booked solid, fixing your lead flow.
That'll be a good one. We'll start with Google Business Profile. Start diving down the rabbit hole here. How to get leads and how to fix it, how to get qualified jobs and how to book the jobs. So if you want to learn about that specific to land clearing, forestry, mulching, jump on next Friday, 7 a.m. Mountain, 8 a.m. Central. We'll see y'all there. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, never settle for less. And do not forget, we got a free school group for you guys who are starting out, school.com/ownerops, SKOOL.com/ownerops.